in waterfall methodology, you basically develop your whole product before anyone gets to see it, and you have one launch of it, and that's it. You're stuck with what you've got there. Whereas the what I think is the better way to do it, and the way that we're using it, is agile methodology. So we basically build a first product, and then we show it to people and let them play around with it and test it and say what works well, what do you think would work better, and then we go off, make the change, and we're constantly improving the service that we're offering. So as a project, we started in 2016, and we did lots of work initially with users to understand what the problems were with the current way of applying for divorce. How can we improve it? How can we make it more user friendly? And following all that research that we did, we built a prototype. It was very sort of basic. We ran a small pilot, and then we put it into a private beta environment from July 2017. Now, private beta is basically, it's not available anywhere. So if you went off searching for it on gov.uk, you wouldn't find it. We had to invite you to use the service. So we had adverts around to say, if you're interested in applying for this digitally, contact us. We then had sort of a list of criteria which would make you eligible for testing our product. And if you were eligible, we'd then send you a link to get into our system and trial it with us. So because we've done a lot of that work now, we've been testing and improving it for so long, it's now suitable to go into a public beta environment. The difference between public and private is that it's available on gov.uk, but it isn't the finished product. So we're still adding to this, and we still will continue to improve it. So we're going to show you today the product that's out there, that's ready to go. But as I say, we will keep improving that, and anytime anything does change, we'll come back to you and let you know what's changing, what looks different on the screens, any of that stuff. We're going to So what we know about our users, so very high level, but anyone who's legally married can use online divorce. It's not currently available for civil partnerships or anyone who wants to get the marriage annulled. So we're just talking about divorce cases here. At a later point, we are going to look at civil partnerships, but for now, just divorce. And it is only for people who are in England and Wales. So Scotland and Northern Ireland have different procedures, so they're not using this product. So it can be any gender or age above 16 who applies for this. And because of yourselves and the guys at the call centre, it can be it's open to anyone with any digital skill level. You don't have to be particularly good at IT, and with your guys' help, they'll be able to apply digitally. So just to run you through some of the terms that are involved in divorce. So don't have to go through the first one really. Divorce, you all know what divorce is. Beta service, I think I've just explained that. So it's just basically that we're constantly improving it and making amendments to it while it's still out there in the public domain. So a petitioner. So the petitioner is the person who's applying for the divorce. So they can do that online or using the paper form. The respondent, that is the person that they want to get divorced from. So either party can do it. So it can be a wife wanting to divorce a husband, or husband, wife, etc. And so previously, divorces were all handled locally. Going back a while, it was all centralised into what are called regional divorce centres. So there's 9 of them around the country, but there's 4 who are digital sites. So there's only 4 who are going to be involved in this process. The rest of them are dealing with the paper applications. So our 4 digital sites are Stoke, Southampton, Liverpool, and Nottingham. And those guys have all been involved with us in the private beta stage, so they've got experience of it. They're not only coming on board with us since it's gone on gov.uk, so they've got all that background knowledge and they've seen the service evolve. Help with fees. I'm not going to cover this in much detail. It is sort of quite generic, so it applies to a few services, not just divorce. Very high level. If associated with applying for divorce, so it's £550 that it costs. If people are on benefits or their income is at a certain level, they might be able to get help with it. But there's a separate video available to you to walk you through that, so I don't propose to cover it any further than that. So, online petition. So, what this is, if someone applies using the paper form, what would happen? They fill in this big application form with lots of questions that aren't applicable. When it goes through to the divorce centre and they do the checks on that, they send that whole application form out to both the petitioner and the respondent. But as I said, there's a lot that's not applicable. So what we've devised for this online solution is an online petition which basically just is a summary document. So all the key information that was included on the application, that is sent out to the petitioner and the respondent. So only key information. They don't have to trawl through hundreds of boxes that aren't really key at all. So the notice of issue. So along with the online petition that I've just described goes a document called a notice of issue. So this tells the petitioner that the divorce application has been sent to the respondent, and it gives them the next steps in the divorce process as well. Then the other document that goes out initially goes to the respondent, again with the online petition. So they get the key information that was used on the online petition, and they get an acknowledgement of service. Now, this document, they need to fill it in to say whether they agree with the reasons that have been stated for the divorce and whether they wish to contest it or not. So they fill that in and return it to the regional divorce centre. At the moment, this is via paper. So eventually, and I'll talk through this a bit later on, but we do intend to digitise this as well, but for the moment this is paper. And then decree nisi. So once the respondent has filled in their acknowledgement of service, sent that back, the acknowledgement of service then goes, it's sent back to the petitioner to let them know whether their spouse is challenging it or not. And we also send them an application form for decree nisi. So we do this by email. So they get a copy of that back. This is contested or not contested, and an application for decree nisi. Now, in the small number of cases where the respondent is defending the case, then at the moment they can't then use the online solution. So they have to drop out to a paper solution, but eventually it will all be online. Now, so just go back, just one more thing on the decree nisi. So at this stage, once you get the decree nisi through, they still have to wait then 6 weeks and a day before they can apply for the decree absolute. So it's the decree absolute, which is it's completely ends the marriage. So once they've got the decree nisi through, at that stage they are still married. And after 6 weeks and 1 day. They can then apply for a decree absolute. Again, this is a document that we'd email through to them. They fill in the decree absolute application, and once that's approved, they get a legal order to say that the marriage is now ended. So the online journey. So this is what it looks like, the end-to-end process at the moment. So they would come into you guys, you'd talk them through the process, help them complete it on gov.uk. There may or may not be a help with fees application to help them with as well. So once that's completed, they upload the marriage certificate, fill in all the details, and then it's submitted online to the regional divorce centres. When it's with the regional divorce centres, they check everything, make sure it's all right, and then they issue the documents I mentioned before. So the online petition and the acknowledgement of service goes to the respondent, and the online petition and the notice of issue goes through to the petitioner. So the respondent then replies to the acknowledgement of service, and at that stage, once it's gone through to legal advisors, they can apply for the decree nisi. Once the decree nisi is granted, they have to wait 6 weeks, 1 day, and then they can apply for a decree absolute. So the steps which you're going to be helping with is the initial bit where you're helping them with the application, and then because we're doing the decree nisi and the decree absolute bits by email, they may just need some help with you uploading the form back onto an email and sending it in to us. We'll sort of hopefully just have to keep monitoring that and see if people are wanting help with that or not. But definitely that front end of the service, that's where we really need your help. And just at the bottom there, there's just to relay the divorce fee, £550, but they may be eligible for help with fees. So that is as it stands at the moment. And just one other thing to mention. So when they complete the application online, there's a box to say whether they agree to correspond with us by digital means. So if they tick that box, then that's when we can email them. If they don't tick that box and for some reason they don't want to correspond with digitally, from that point on, the decree nisi and the decree absolute applications they'll have to be by post and not by email. And then we at our end we could just upload that into our case management system. So as I say, that's where we are at the moment. That's what it looks like as of the 1st of May when we went live with this. But it is still being evolved. So I'll talk you through what it's going to look like eventually a bit later on.
So we've just had a couple of questions, Gareth. Can I just throw them in just to make sure that we cover them off?
Yeah, sure.
So first up, there was a question: as people are sort of as our centres are helping people through using this online system, if there are things that they would suggest as improvements, is there a way for them to communicate those back to you?
So we intend to run another one, I think, a call with you guys a month after our go live. So we're hoping that at that point we can discuss it in detail. But if you do have anything as you're going along that you think we urgently need to know about, then there's some contact details at the end for the assisted digital team. So you'll get copies of these slide decks, and if you could email them to us as soon as you come across them, that'd be great.
Absolutely. I thought that was the answer, but I just thought I would make sure and ask the question. And a question there from Debbie as well. Just so on that sort of follow-up part of the process, so if they do choose to do digital communications and they do need support with uploading things via email, do they have to contact the contact centre to make a second appointment, or just get back in touch with the centre?
They do, so they'll have to go through the contact centre and get an appointment made for them first. Yeah,
absolutely. Fantastic. Thanks for that, Gareth. won't interrupt you anymore.
No problem, Kevin. So we've got a checklist here of the things that people need when completing the online petition application. Now, just key to mention here, though, that because an individual has to book an appointment to see you guys through the contact centre, they will have been advised of everything they need to bring with them on the day, but they really do need all of this before they can make the application. So they need the original marriage certificate or a certified copy, or if it's a foreign marriage certificate, they need to also have a certified translation with them. So again, nothing for you guys to worry about. They'll have already have been advised about this, but they do need that to make their application. If they've changed the name since they got married, we need to see evidence of that. They need to obviously have all their own details, name and address, etc. They need to have an address for the documents to be sent to the respondent, so for the spouse. So it can either be a home address, they can use the respondent's solicitor's address, or they can use any other address for that response. So if for some reason the spouse doesn't want them to know where they're living, then it can be sent to like a friend's address, but you need the petitioner, the one who's applying for it, needs to have the respondent's permission to use the address that they want to send it to. But without an address, we've got nowhere to send it to. So that's the key thing. In adultery, so if they're using adultery as a reason for divorce, they can, if they wish to, name a co-respondent. So they absolutely don't have to, and in most cases they wouldn't do. But if they do wish to put forward details about the person who the adultery took place with, they can do, and so in that case they need to have their information. So England and Wales, I mentioned before, the petitioner needs to be able to state that they're in England and Wales to be eligible for this service. They need, so when it comes to giving a reason why they want to get divorced, there's 5 different reasons that they can use. So they can use unreasonable behaviour, and if they choose that case, then they have to have actual examples of why the person's been behaving unreasonable. And you'll get to see that on the prototype later, the type of things that we're looking for. But one of the key things just to mention up front is that you don't come up with the reasons why it's unreasonable behaviour and don't lead them at all. So it needs to be their own words why the behaviour is considered unreasonable. So really, that is the out of everything that I mentioned to you, that is the key thing for you to not lead them on at all. So you're just helping them complete the form, not helping them with the wording or anything like that. Adultery, that's the second reason they can apply for it. If the person that they're divorcing agrees, then they can apply if they've been separated for 2 years. If they don't have that person's consent, then they need to have been separated for 5 years to apply for divorce. And then desertion is the 5th reason there. So details of any previous court proceedings. What that means is that is just anything that relates to this marriage. So it's not, if they've been up on a GBH charge, we don't want to know about that. It's just specifically anything to do with this marriage that may be going on. Then we've got financial order. So if they have anything that they want the court to decide on with sort of splitting property, money, anything else, and that could include maintenance, then they can apply for that as well. And then the other thing that they have to have in able to use this is the means to pay for it. So it's either they have to pay the £550 fee, or they have to be eligible for help with fees. And then sort of finally, so this is the way that it's going to look in the future. So as I say, we're still developing parts to this, and so we all, I say all, it's quite a big lump, but what is online at the moment is the application process. So the rest of it we're still doing by email. So as I mentioned right at the start, the acknowledgement of service, the way that we're corresponding with the spouse at the moment is by paper, so they don't get anything digitally. The way that it'll work in the future is that we'll build on the respondent part of the journey. So when someone applies for a divorce, we'll send the spouse an invitation to create an account with us, go online, see the reasons why the spouse wants to get divorced, and be able to fill in their application of acknowledgement of service online. So in the future, you might be helping not the person who is applying for a divorce, but you could be helping also the respondent to reply to that acknowledgement of service. And then, as I mentioned before, decree nisi and decree absolute, that in the future will be done online as well. So it won't be by email, it'll all be done on the one place. So the steps where you'll be helping are that they're outlined in the green boxes. That's what it'll look like, and I think it's safe to say it'll be at some point next year before it's all complete end to end. And then contact details. So there's the number for the regional divorce centres, and those are the guys who will be booking the appointments for you. But then if you've got any questions or comments or any sort of areas where you found people are specifically struggling with, then if you send your comment through to Mike, and he'll make sure they're fed back into our team. And so that's the end of our slide deck.
So that's the end of the slide. So we need to move over to look at the. There's no other questions that have come in on the chat panel just as yet. So I'll give a second or two for those to come in. Yeah. So Debbie. Yeah. So help with fees officially is not one of the 5 services that we're dealing with, but there's a clear recognition that people will need help with that as well. So Hafsa's just popping something in there as well. Yeah, it is something that is going to be quite a keen topic for a lot of the people that we work with. We're looking at the materials to help with that. And now we have Claire with us, who's going to run through this service. Over to you, Claire.
Thank you very much. So this is the digital application that people will see when they access gov.uk. So the initial we've devised is just some general information about the divorce process. So you'll see that it says that it applies to England and Wales only. It explains Scotland and Northern Ireland have their own rules. And it also gives the petitioner a general feel of how long the divorce should take. So there are no celebrity quickie divorces. It does normally take 4 to 6 months to get a divorce. So it just gives that time frame there. It also gives them a little checklist that they can use to check if they can apply online. And again, it goes through the list that Gareth went through earlier. And then it talks about the fees. And it signposts them there to the help with fees application. So they really need to go on there first and get their help with fees number before they start the divorce application. And that's why the link is there, where it says help get help paying the fee. So just that little link there that they can click on, takes them to help with fees. That will give them a reference number, which they'll then need to come and complete the form. Also, just on that page, it signposts them to the paper form there. So they don't actually need to exit the online application. If they think, you know what, online's not for me, there is a signpost to the paper form there which they can go on and complete. But if they feel really happy and they want to carry on, then they can press start now. Okay, so it tells them that it's a new service. At the end of the application, there is a feedback questionnaire. We do read them, we do look at them all. So if people suggest things on there, we are able to look at it. For example, a lot of people said that save and resume facility is something that they all wanted because they get to certain parts of the application, it's quite emotional. So we've now added that feature, added functionality of save and resume. So we will sign in to get started. So they'll enter their email address and they'll set up a password, and that's unique to each individual. So that's part of the sign-in process. So once they've done that, they can sign in, and then this is the actual main body of the application that they're in now. So the first question is, has your marriage broken down irretrievably, as in it can't be saved? And we've tried to make the application as plain English as possible rather than the wordy nature of the previous forms. At this point, if they say no, it will signpost them out of the system because they don't qualify to be able to get a divorce. Your marriage has to have broken down irretrievably. So we're going to say yes to that one. Do you have an address for your husband or wife? So as Gareth explained earlier, you would need an address or permission from them to use a different address. It can be a UK or an international address. We do allow those. So again, we're going to say yes to that one. Do you have a marriage certificate? Again, it has to be the original. You can't use a photocopy. If it isn't in English, you will need a certified translation, and you will need to either upload it or you can post it to the court if you're not able to upload it. We're going to say yes. And do you want help paying your fee? So if they said yes there, when it catches up, it would ask you for the help with fees reference number, and that's where they would need to enter it. So we're just going to say no, we're going to pay the full 550. So who are you divorcing? We do allow for same-sex couples. So at the minute, we're going to say my husband. This is about the 5th time I've divorced him this week. So, and then we'll put in the date of marriage. And did we marry in the UK? So the answer is yes. If you said no there, it'd take you to the screen about if you married abroad. And then you can enter those details then. So the next screen is what we used to call jurisdiction. So we've got rid of a lot of the language that was in the old form: jurisdiction, domicile, habitually resident, the parts of the legal aspect of the divorce petition that a lot of people didn't understand. So again, following the rules of plain English, we've said there that it must be a connection to England or Wales for the court to have jurisdiction or the legal power. So it sort of explains it to people more in simple English. So is your life mainly based in England or Wales? And then it breaks it down again further. Working, owning property, having children in school, and your main family life takes place in England or Wales. So they say yes to that one. Then it asks about your husband's circumstances. So again, it asks the same question. So we'll say yes to that one. And the form's iterative. So if you've said that you're in a same-sex marriage and you're divorcing your wife, it will refer to wife all the way through. So it adapts to your circumstances. So it now tells me that based on my answers, I can apply for a divorce in England or Wales because both my husband and I are habitually resident. And it gives you little drop-down boxes, which again, if you're still not sure or you think, I didn't enter that, what does it mean habitually resident? I haven't said yes to that. It then drops down and gives you more information about habitually resident and domicile and residual jurisdiction. So if they really want the legal stuff, there's a bit more information there. So then it says, do you want to add more connections to England and Wales? When we did a lot of user research, some people didn't feel comfortable with the fact that they weren't really sure what they were saying there. So if you're confident, you can click that you're confident. If you're not confident, then you can say I'm not sure. And just so that I can show you that process in case you do get anybody that goes through that, I'll just run through that now with you. So it talks about being domicile, and again it gives more examples about what domicile actually means. So based on the information there, they can say yes, we're domiciled in England and Wales. And is your husband? So again, you can, if it's no, then you'd have to click no. It asks if you've been living in England and Wales for the last 12 months. So again, you would say yes. And then it just confirms that your connections are all there. So they've added extra information and it still comes back with the same response, which gave some people in our research just that little bit of extra confidence. And then you can click I'm confident. If they're still not confident, it does say show me all the connections, and it will give them an extra list. So do you want to keep your details private from your husband? There are obviously reasons why you wouldn't perhaps as a petitioner want to share the details of your address with your husband or your wife. So you can say I don't need my details to be kept private, or I do want my details to be kept private. If they click on keep my details private, we will not divulge the address of the petitioner to the respondent. If they say no, then we do actually send a copy of the address. Sometimes you find that the respondent and the petitioner still live at the same address. So I'm just going to say, I don't need you to keep my details private. So on this section, you would provide your current names. So say perhaps for a wife that had a double-barreled name when she was married, or she's reverted to her maiden name, then she would put the name that she's currently going under. And then it asks for the husband's full name, so the name that he's using. Now this one's really important. How are your names displayed on the marriage certificate? In the paper form, we had a 40% rejection rate, and part of that was because nobody ever got this section right. So it says there, copy what is written on your marriage certificate exactly, including any extra text such as formerly known as. So if somebody was married previously and they were divorced and then had married again, on that marriage certificate it would say Claire Smith, formerly known as Claire Jones. That was what was on the marriage certificate, and it's that formerly known as that we really need. So you would enter your full name as on the marriage certificate, e.g. a maiden name, and you would enter the husband's full name as on the marriage certificate, so how it was written by the registrar on the wedding day, and then continue. Court staff do have the ability to make minor amendments once it's been submitted, but obviously the plan is to get the form as accurate as possible. Have you changed your name since you got married? So the court would need to know if you've changed your name or if you've changed it since.
Can I just because I can see this being a question that will come up in our centres, does that mean, so my wife changed her name on our wedding day, is that what this means?
No, so say, for example, my sister, when she got divorced, before she got divorced, reverted back to her maiden name. Yes. So she dropped the hyphenated double name that she'd got and just reverted back to Butler. Okay. So when she completed her divorce petition, she put in there, and she changed it. So she provided a copy of her default certificate.
Fantastic, and great examples.
Cool.
Thanks.
So again, we're just going to say no for that one, but if they have, then it asks them how they've changed the name. As Gareth says, they need to consent to be contacted via email. To be fair, it's working pretty well with the online product at the minute. People are liking the fact that they can issue a petition and they can get an email pretty much straight away saying that it's been issued. So they are liking that fact, but they must tick there that they agree in order for the email transfer to take place. We also ask for a phone number, but you can assure the person that you're helping that neither their email address or telephone number will be conveyed to the respondent. We don't share that information. So it asks for a current address. We've got postcode lookup as well. So we just look up the address and then we can continue. So then it asks, is this the address that you want the divorce papers to be sent to? So yes or no if it's a different address. And this is for the petitioner, the person that's applying. So we'll say yes. And then it says, does your husband live at the same address? So if they do, then you can say yes. If they don't, then you can say no. So I'm going to say yes, just to show you what it actually comes up with. So it asks if your husband wants his papers sent to that address. It says, yes, use this address. No, send them to a solicitor's address. Or no, send them to a different address. So again, we've got the options. If it's send them to a different address, you do have to have the husband's permission or the respondent's permission to send them to another address. Okay. Now choose a reason for divorce. So these are the legal facts that you choose for the divorce. As you'll see from the screen, I haven't been married 5 years. So separated for 5 years is not an option for me. If you hadn't been married for 2 years, it wouldn't show separated for 2 years with consent. So again, it's an iterative form that fits to somebody's circumstances rather than giving you so many options it blows your brain. So we're going to go with behaviour, just because that's the one I like to divorce him on the most. Okay. So describe your husband's behaviour. Now, this went to a judge for legal checking about, it felt like 50 times. We need to be able to give the petitioner some examples, but as Gareth said before, without leading them through the process, and that's going to be the really difficult bit for you guys. So the form's quite specific now. It says talk about examples of your husband's behaviour which affect you the most and also the most recent incidents. And if the health has been affected, state how it was being affected. Don't include examples which you're both at fault. So if somebody says, we don't love each other anymore, a legal advisor at decree no-fault stage would reject that because we don't have a no-fault divorce. You have to say, my husband's feet smell, and because of that reason, I don't love him anymore. And it has to be a reason of why that behaviour or why you find it intolerable to live with that person. So the section says there, you can describe how they have behaved over a period of time or use particular incidents. Try to include dates if you remember them. Some people put around September, blah, blah, blah. My husband started drinking. So just, if they can be specific, it's fine. If not, as long as they put in some reason as to why they can't live with their husband anymore. Then says that the husband will be sent a copy of the divorce application, as Gareth covered. So again, if you're living in the same house, you might want to avoid writing anything that's going to cause the police to be knocking on your door. Then it says provide enough examples to satisfy the court that you can't be reasonably expected to live with your husband. And then it's got example, my husband, ... If you'd filled it in for the wife, it would say my wife, ... And really what we want is the person to be able to put in an example of the behaviour. There are 3 examples. They can add an extra one if they want. And our Google Analytics, that this is the screen that most people save and close on because it gets quite emotional for them. So you've entered your examples. It then says, is the behaviour you've described still happening? So you'd say yes or no. So we say yes. And then it asks about other court cases related to your marriage, property or children. So if there was anything relating to a previous marriage or nothing to do with this marriage, it wouldn't be included on here. It's in proceedings that are between you and your husband. So if there was a case in relation to access to the children, then that would go on there. But we're going to say no. Okay, this is the financial remedy aspect. So dividing money and property. Ideally, the solicitors will tell you that you always want somebody to say yes to this question, because if they say no, then they're barred from making any financial orders in relation to that marriage at all. So it really gives an extra massive section there about financial orders, what they need to do, how they would look at it. And again, it's for the person to decide whether they click yes or no. But ideally, you want them to say yes. Who is the financial order for? And then you would just say who it's for, or just you. And it tells them that they haven't applied for a financial order. That's a separate process, and they would need to fill in a Form A and pay another fee. And again, they can do this at any point during the divorce process, as long as it's before decree absolute. But that's a separate issue, and the financial remedy aspect is dealt with separately, and that is a separate project as well. Claiming the costs of the divorce. So this will be decided by a judge at decree nisi stage, not a judge, legal advisor, sorry. The legal advisor will consider this section of the divorce application. Again, there's a drop-down box that tells you more about what happens if you claim costs. And then it says, do you want to claim your costs? Yes, no, or only if he defends. So we're going to say yes. And then it says, how much do you want to claim from your husband? Half, all because he's at fault, a specific or maximum amount, or a percentage. So we're going to say half. Now we're on the bit of upload your marriage certificate. Currently, there's 87% of our users manage to unassistedly upload their marriage certificate. We're a little bit worried about this, but everybody seems like they can do it. They can upload onto Facebook, so they can upload onto here. It gives advice again about how to take the picture and what to do with it, and then gives them advice on clicking and choosing a file. If they can't upload it, it tells them how they're able to send it through post, and the most important thing, to write the reference number on the back of each document. So you're at the check your answers stage. So you read through it all, you think, oh no, I wasn't married 2013, I was married 2003. It allows you to go back and change your answer. It again reviews everything for you. You can review your reasons about the divorce, the reason for divorce, everything else. And then you've got what's called your statement of truth. Previously it was called the prayer. Lots of people didn't understand that. They weren't religious. Why was it called a prayer? So by making it a statement of truth, it's a bit less controversial. So I confirm that I'm applying for the marriage to be dissolved, for an order for my husband to pay some or all of the costs, and to make financial orders. Again, this adapts depending on what questions you've answered through the form, and I believe the facts stated in this petition are true. The drop down says that the first statement is the prayer and the second is a statement of truth. Just a little warning button at the bottom that says only submit your application if you can pay now. If you can't pay now, save and close it and return to it later. GovPay will only give you 60 minutes to pay, and then it will time you out. So you must make sure that the person pays within 60 minutes of hitting the payment page.
So I think this probably answers a question that Hafsa had just put in. So if someone is applying for help with fees, they need the answer to the help with fees before they click that button. So they'd save and close at that point if they were waiting for the answer.
The help with fees is sort of the first or second, I think it's the second questioning.
Yeah.
If at that point there you said you did need help with fee, but you didn't have a reference number, it would signpost you out the application there.
Okay. Yeah.
Some people apply for what's called a retrospective refund with help with fees to say that they are entitled to benefits, but perhaps they don't have an entitlement at that time of applying.
Yeah.
Without getting technical, they can apply later and get a refund later.
Okay.
But they'd still need to pay the fee up front.
Okay. Good.
So again, talking about the payment, it says your fee is $550. It can be made by anyone with a credit card. So if your dad's desperate to get rid of the son-in-law, he could stand there and pay it with you. And it says if you're claiming the divorce costs, this will be a later order. Again, it just reminds you've got 60 minutes, or unfortunately, you do have to start the application again. So continue. And then this is the same page as used for passports, driving licenses, car tax renewal, TV license. So it gives people a bit of confidence. It is gov.uk and it is GovPay. So they would enter all of their details, just the same as you would anything else, and you would continue. It then gives you a review, and once you click pay, that payment's been made.
Your application's complete, so you're divorcing again. Fourth time this week, did you say?
Six now.
Okay, so I didn't notice any questions other than about the help with fees, which we've already covered as we were going through that. So I'll just give a few moments. So if anyone does have any questions, if they want to sort of type away, or if you have a microphone, just sort of speak up. We'll just pick out, there was just one piece of feedback from Debbie. They were part of the pilot in March and found the form to be really accessible even for the people with limited IT skills, which I guess is great for you guys to hear that. So that's good to know. Okay, so a question from Hafsa there about if they're applying for their other half to pay towards the fees. Do they still have to pay the full amount up front and then get that paid back? Or?
Yep, so they pay the full amount to start off with. When the legal advisor assesses it at decree nisi stage, as part of the decree nisi pronouncement, the judge that makes the decree nisi pronouncement will make an order for costs. So the petitioner then gets sent that order for costs, and they then need to pursue the respondent for that money. So a copy of that order would be sent to the respondent saying you now need to pay £275.
Okay. And if they didn't, then they might come in for a
civil money
claim, which is a different service, and we'll talk about that another time. Okay. So the question, is the form very different if you are a respondent? So that's not online yet, is it?
That's the acknowledgement of service.
Acknowledgement of service is not online. See, I've been paying attention.
The acknowledgement gives you an overview of the data and the information that's been submitted by the petitioner. It asks them to confirm dates. So if you were going on 2 years separation by consent, it would say, the petitioners advised us that you separated on this date. Tell us what date you think you separated.
Yeah.
And then we have to go back to the petitioner and say, this doesn't match. But it's very similar. And it gives them the chance. They may say, well, no, I don't agree. I left her because she did this to me, or whichever way around. But you know what? Let her have the divorce anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And a question from Debbie. Once they have the email for the decree nisi, how long do they have to reply, or I guess that's to apply for the decree
Decree
absolute. So it's a minimum of 6 weeks and 1 day. See, I really was paying attention. I'm gonna get sort of full marks at the end of the
And that is
session.
a part of statute in the
Yeah.
law. They
Yeah.
can't get around that.
Yeah.
It's always going to be 6 weeks and 1 day from the day of pronouncement. So it's not when they file their request for the decree absolute, for the decree nisi, sorry. It's when the judge actually pronounced that decree nisi in court.
Yeah.
It's 6 weeks and 1 day from that period.
Yeah.
But what you'll find that the court staff in the digital divorce centres will do is they attach something to say you will not be able to apply for your decree absolute until after this date, which is a date 6 weeks and 1 day after the pronouncement.
Okay.
So they'll sort of advise that way.
Okay. Right. I think actually, Debbie's pointing out I'm kind of misunderstanding her question, so I'll read it out again. Once they have the email for the decree nisi, how long do they have to reply for the decree? So I guess that's the respondent. Does the respondent have to do anything at the decree nisi stage?
The petitioner has a year to apply for a decree absolute after the 6 weeks and 1 day. If they don't apply for the decree absolute within that year, then they have to make an application, and it's a decree absolute out of time, and they'd have to say to a judge, why is it taken you longer than a year to apply for this decree absolute? If after that year as well that the petitioner hasn't applied, the respondent can make an application and say they might have started the process, but I want to finish it.
Yeah.
Because they're not continuing the process, and they can make an application.
That's good to know if my wife ever does go down that route. Okay, I think that's answered those questions. We'll just give it another couple of moments to see if there's anything else, or if anyone wants to go back and see any of the pages, or if they had any questions. So we'll just wait for anything more to come in, just for another couple of minutes. And then we are getting into the last few minutes, so we'll just switch back to the slide deck just to sort of make sure that everybody's got those contact details if they need anything else. So. Right, so let's think back to, in fact, let's go back to the slide deck, and then I think Gareth's timeline might help us with this answer, Debbie. So just to move back to the slide deck. Just bear with us 1 second. Yeah, so there's definitely a thing when people are struggling with emails to respond to them. So this is the timeline for how things happen. So people come into one of our centres and they make the application, and then it's seen by your people who send out the notice of issue, and what's the other thing that goes with that?
The online petition and the acknowledgement of service.
Acknowledgement of service. Yeah, that goes to the respondent.
Yep.
And then when that comes back, it's seen by your guys again, and then the decree nisi is issued, or it goes to a judge, and then it's.
So it'll go to a legal advisor to be assessed. So
Yeah.
they'll look at the reasons for divorce and check if they comply with what a person needs in order to get divorced. That will then be listed for
Yes.
DN pronouncement, and on that date, a judge will sit and say, all of the cases that are on this decree nisi list before me, does anybody object to these being pronounced? It's normally in an empty courtroom, and he'll say, right, I've pronounced them at 12:57 on the whatever date it is.
Okay, and then an email will be sent out to say that they have a decree nisi.
Yes.
Is there anything that the petitioner needs to do at that point? Do
No.
they need to respond to that email in any way?
No, they just wait for the 6 weeks and 1 day to elapse.
Okay, so it's important for them to, so Debbie, you're absolutely right. It's important that they can access their emails so that they know when to start counting their 6 weeks and 1 day from. But there's not actually anything that they have to do as a point of urgency when that comes through.
And they've got 12 months from the date of that pronouncement to apply for that decree.
Absolutely fantastic. So I think even for all of the people that I've met in our centres, even those that struggle most with their emails, we could probably manage to get them back into their email account within a year. So we should be all right there. That's all looking pretty good. I'll just move on to that end slide again, just to quickly sort of share. If you are having problems, if someone has got a question that you're not able to support with, there's a helpline number there. That's your regional divorce centres. So they'll be able to help with the actual process that people are going through. And if it's something about the online system, if you've got feedback about how that's working or how booking appointments is working or anything like that, then that's the assisted digital team, and the details are there. And as Gareth said earlier, we will be sharing this slide deck. I'll get Kath from our side to share that to all of the centres that have been involved. Hafs has just asked if I could possibly share where to look for the handbook. Okay, so I can do that, but you'll just have to bear with me a couple of seconds while I actually go and find it, Hafs. Thanks for that challenge. So I'm just going to stop sharing this slide deck and share my screen again. So this is going to be on the Online Centres website. And Hafsa, feel free to help me out in the chat panel at any point. Yes, that's project. So Melanie already knows that's the direct link. That's to go straight through to the handbook directly. If you don't have that link available, then we've managed to find it. So we went to from our homepage, we went to the funding tab and went for currently funded projects, and then further down that screen we found HMCTS, and this is where you will find the handbook and the feedback forms and checklists that we've already been talking about. So was that okay for everyone? Did you follow my quick navigation? Excellent. Thank you all very much. So we are absolutely bang on time. It's almost like someone has planned this session. Really well done to our two presenters for getting through quite a lot of information in a very quick time today. You've done excellently. Thank you all for joining the session and for your questions and your interactions as we've gone along through the session today. Do keep in touch if you do sort of think of anything else after we close down the session. Then feel free to drop us a line. You'll certainly have had emails from Kath and from Hafsa to help you get set up with this project. And we do look forward to hearing from you as you start to sort of see the first clients coming through. So the last thing that I was trying to pay attention to, did I hear you say that this has been live since Tuesday?
It's Tuesday, yeah, the 1st of May.
So we could be starting to see appointments coming into our centres at any time.
Now, I'd guess, yeah.
That would be absolutely fantastic. Guess that's it from us, unless is there anything else that I've missed, Claire or Gareth?
No.
Okay, I will thank you two very much for your time and thank everyone in the session for their time. And then I'll stop that recording and close it all down. Thank you.